Hello, I'm Cormac. You're listening to Queerly Beloved, supported by Amazon Music. In this series, I invite DJs and musicians, friends and allies from the LGBTQ+ community to talk about music, queerness, and anything else that shaped their unique story. My guest today is a very special guest. It is DJ Paulette. How best to describe Paulette? Legend seems a much overused word, yet it's very appropriate for someone who has held residencies in London, Paris, and Ibiza, and the craziest and perhaps the most monumental, the legendary Hacienda in Manchester back in the early 90s. The fucking Hacienda, people. It's hard to express how much impact Paulette has had on the music scene, and she's put her wisdom, her stories, her experience, and much more into her amazing book, Welcome to the Club, The Life and Lessons of a Black Woman DJ, which came out in 2024. You can find a playlist to all the music mentioned in today's episode and every episode at the link in the episode description. It's been an incredible experience to talk to Paulette because she has so much history that we can learn from, yet everything she's saying is so relevant to now and the future that we wish to have in the community. Paulette, I want to tell you that I'm always excited by my guests, and I'm very honored to have you on the podcast today.
Yay.
because you are a pioneer in what you've done musically and in who you are and in where you intersect in terms of gender and queerness and race and all that you've achieved. And I'm so happy to have you today.
Thank you.
And I want to ask you, as I ask all of my guests, who you are, how you identify, and what it is that you do.
I am DJ Paulette. My pronouns are she, her. I did consider they for a little while, but I thought I wouldn't be being fully true to myself. And I am a DJ. I'm a music industry consultant. I'm an author. I have DJed now for over 30 years. And I started not by choice, by chance. And here I am 30 years later DJing by choice. Because there's been a lot of highs and lows and maybe I shouldn't and maybe I should and, whatever. But I have stuck with this because this is the love of my life. Music is the love of my life. And I will do it until and actually beyond, because I will find a way, whatever happens, even if I go deaf and my arms and legs drop off. That's how much music means to me. That is exactly how much music means to me. And I've written a book called Welcome to the Club, The Life and Lessons of a Black Woman DJ, because I believe that over those 30 odd years, I have learned lots of lessons, and I've had lots of experiences that I would like to share with people in order that they can, if they want to DJ, if they want to work in the music industry, if they want to write a book, if they want to travel the world or do whatever, maybe they will find something within those pages that will be helpful. And also wrote it to kind of unearth a lot of hidden histories that people maybe didn't know about the electronic music culture that we know and love now. It wasn't just about Ibiza, although it did play a massive big part. And I really wanted to write about women's contribution to this electronic music, dance music culture, because we don't hear enough about it. So I kind of took it upon myself. I do like a crusade. I do like a crusade.
But I think it's I've read your book and I think it's an incredible book for anyone who's interested in the history of our scene to read. I think it's an incredible book for any white person to read and understand their privilege, for any male person to read and understand their privilege, for any straight person to read and understand privilege. I think there's a lot in it. And, when people say that dance, it's a choice to make dance music political, I would say read your book or or learn your history or do some research, and you'll realize that it's not a choice for
Yeah,
people
it
to
is
make dance
political.
music political. Going out of your house to go to the shop is political because of who you are, whether you like it or not,
Exactly.
and that's put upon you.
It is. It's exactly that. And if you consider where we come from, where dance music comes from, the black queer clubs of, Detroit, Chicago, Manchester, Ireland, wherever it came from, our community, and it needs to be said. But it also needs to be said that it was not a safe time for it to come from there. So it was a rebellious act. It was a politically rebellious act doing this thing, making these parties, evolving this culture. It's political. We were doing something different that had not been encouraged, or it didn't even exist until really the late 80s, early 90s anyway. So, and then, you had the criminal justice bill that tried to prevent it, and then it got lifted in 1997, and then you got the beginning of the festivals, and it's all political. Everything about it is
100%.
political, and you cannot kind of extricate one from the other.
And when you're talking, all I can hear is like the lyrics to Brighter Days.
Exactly.
I want to ask you, where you grew up and who you grew up with.
I grew up in Manchester. I was born in North Manchester General Hospital, which is Crumpsall Hospital. And I am the youngest of 8. I've got 6 sisters and 1 brother, and mum and my dad, obviously. Our mum and my dad are Jamaican immigrants. They came over in the 50s. Not on Windrush, but they came over in the 50s. My mum was a nurse. She had a bursary or something to study nursing at some big hospital in Preston, I think, and my dad was a printer. But my mum was also a singer, and my mum was incredibly musical, and my mum's family is incredibly musical. She used to sing in a group with her sisters and her brothers, and my mum's dad was a jazz musician. He played double bass, and he had his own band that played on the radio all the time. And my mum and her sisters sang with her father. So when my mum came over to the UK, she was singing. So she was singing cabaret, jazz in all of the clubs, and she was quite, she did well. My mum was relatively famous. And I would say that she is one of my biggest influences because, in seeing how my mum worked in the day, she was holding down XYZ jobs. She always had 2 or 3 jobs. And then at night, she was singing. And my mum had glamorous costumes, lots of sequins, lots of feathers, lots of chiffon, lots of, gauzy fabrics, lots of stilettos.
That's where you get your
metallics.
snazzy outfit from, because you look so great at Glastonbury.
Totally.
That's where you got it.
And even when I do my makeup now and I'll do the black eyeliner and I see my mum, I'm like, I'm turning into my mum, because my mum always had the Cleopatra eyes, and when I was younger, I used to be like, oh, why doesn't she look like everybody else's mum? Because all my friends' mums were dinner ladies or housewives and not very glamorous at all. And then we were the only black family on our street, and my mum was always like turning it out, work, like big fur coat, massive afro wig, or massive wig, shoulder pads, sequins, sparkle. My mum just absolutely sparkled every day of the week. And yeah, without fail, I get my biggest influence is my mum, no question. And then the second one is Grace Jones.
Those are 2 great examples. I'm just thinking about the pride that your mum must have kept alive within herself, or anyone from that generation coming into England in the 50s.
Mm.
You know, I just think to get glammed up every day and go out there and be, you know, a style warrior and just have confidence about yourself, because the racism that people, I mean, the racism that people face now, but the racism that people faced then, geez.
But it's funny as well, because my mum will say, oh, you know, there was racism, but then when she was singing, not so much, you know, because people loved her and they did, you know. My mum was a very celebrated performer, artist, and singer. You know, she had newspaper articles written about her in the Manchester Evening News. You know, she did well. So she had privileges that other people maybe didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
because she was moving in circles where it was difficult, but it was a bit less difficult than it was for everybody else. I mean, she gave us this kind of work ethic and this existence ethic that you can be anything and don't take no for an answer, you know, without telling us, don't take no for an answer, but you're black. Just remember that you're black. Whereas my dad would say, remember that you're black. And my mum would say, don't take no for an answer. You can do anything you want. Be academic, be brilliant, be, you know, just go out there and shine. And my dad would be the like, don't forget your station. You know, my dad very much remembered the blackness of it. And my mum is just like,
What a trooper your mum was. What a mix to have in her, like the artistry and the, you know, the more academic thing, and also to be a mom.
yeah.
What music do you remember from then, Paulette?
Me and my twin used to love a record by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers called Up Jumps a Rabbit. And it's actually, when I went back and listened to the lyrics, it's quite dark as a song. It's dark, but also positive, because the guy's saying, you know, he's basically at his wit's end and he's feeling like he wants to end it all. But then up jumps a rabbit and says, just look up, and everything will be better.
When I listened to it, I was like, that's a blues record. Those are blues lyrics.
It is.
Those are fucking blues lyrics, but it's kind of a doo-wop thing.
Yeah.
And I was
I
like,
was walking along the street,
yeah.
looking down at my feet, looking down at my shoes, I think he says. It's a sad tune. It's totally blues. You know, he's almost suicidal, this guy. And then up jumped a rabbit from the apple tree, and a friendly bluebird looking down at me. And it's just like, oh my God, there's hope.
Exactly. And it's the perfect record for this topic we just had, because it's like, it's about hanging on to positivity. And like,
totally.
You mentioned another record actually when I asked you this prior.
David Bowie, Laughing Gnome, which again, you know, this, you know, the Laughing Gnome for David Bowie fans is a bit of a difficult one, because this is kind of a whimsical record. Why did he write this tune? You know, but it's coming in 1969. So it was pure pop song, 3-minute pop song. And it's still in that phase of David Bowie trying to find who he really is as an artist. So it doesn't really fit in with the David Bowie he became. But I loved this record. It is just a record as a child that I could learn. It was funny. It was cute. It had a sped up vocal because he pretended, you know, he was the Laughing Gnome. So it's like, I was walking down the high street and I heard footsteps behind me, and there was a little old man. Hello.
Yeah.
In scarlet and grey, chuckling away. So they sped up the vocals, and I loved that. I loved the interplay of this creation of a thing called the Laughing Gnome. And it was him. I knew it was him. You know, there wasn't a gnome in the studio. It was him. But the story that he told was just so funny. And for a child, it must have been like the crazy frog in
Oh,
in
yeah.
69 terms. There's always one of those novelty records that kids just buy because they love it. Or maybe it's not just kids that buy it. It's one of those records that possibly runs the risk of being a novelty track.
Can we perhaps just acknowledge that David Bowie also made a hit pop record, perhaps aimed at the children's market, based on an acid trip?
When I was growing up, there wasn't anybody queer in my family. You couldn't say the word queer in our house. It's not that my family certainly aren't homophobic, but there was nobody queer, and queer wasn't an issue. But it was for me. I knew I wasn't a lesbian, and I knew I wasn't straight. And I knew I was in the middle of something that I didn't even really have a term for. And the struggle for me always was, I can't talk about this with anybody. And I have been actively bisexual since I was 14 years old, since I was really pretty much 15, I would say. So pretty much since I became sexually active, I have been bisexual. But I never took a girlfriend home. It was always very furtive. It was always very toilets and nightclubs and dark corners and not holding hands. It was always very hidden. And I think that's one of the saddest things in my life, is that it has always been very hidden, because that puts attention in every single relationship I've had, because it's not been 100% true or on the level, because there's been a secret. And it's really hard talking about this, actually, because, I've been married and divorced. I've had X amount of very public straight relationships, and I have had X amount of very secret queer relationships. And I think it's been hard for my girlfriends, or whether it's been a girlfriend for a long period of time or it's been a girlfriend for a hot minute. I know I've been with both sexes for whatever length of time it's lasted. And I think it's been hard for them because they have not existed. The straight ones have existed and been seen. And for me, that side of me has been very hidden. And there have been moments where I've wanted to be out, and I've been told, even by queer friends, you're not gay, because I'm bi and it doesn't count. I've been told bi doesn't count. Christopher Biggins was in the press saying shit, pretty much shit or get off the pot. You have to make a decision. You can't be bi. You can only be straight or gay. Now, that for me always really pissed me off, because that's like, then that means within the queer community, the binary is still in operation. You can only be one thing or another. And that is not fair, because it's possible to be anywhere on that spectrum of queerness. And wherever you fall on that spectrum of queerness, you should be able to take your place, and you should be able to be considered, and you should be able to be included in that community. You shouldn't feel like your queerness is not relevant. If you're not straight, then what the fuck are you? Do you know what I mean? Who the hell 100%. Am I? If I'm not straight, who the hell am I? Because I know I'm not straight. That boat sailed a long time ago.
When you speak about it, it reminds me of friends that I have that are biracial, and they say, I was getting shit from this side because I wasn't enough, and I was getting shit from this side because I was too much.
It's exactly the same thing.
I think it must be a very difficult space as well, because I can imagine that, from a parent's point of view, they can see it as like a phase or these kind of things. It's like you're not really embraced for for who you truly are.
Because there's also that question, particularly with being bisexual and saying that I'm bisexual, is like, okay, then prove it. Where's your girlfriend? It's like, that's not the point. It's the feeling, it's the knowing.
So, in talking about your queer awakening, we talk primarily about music. So, very often for my guest, it might be an artist or a record or a sound that where they realize that they have a connection to that person or a connection to that music or to the song or something of a queer awakening. It can also be, a relative that was listening to music that was had some kind of queer sensibility. So it's completely open.
For me, that two artists, Bowie and Grace Jones, and this is me in 15, 16, really in the lyrics, in the lifestyle, because you have to remember as well, we didn't have the internet. So everything we read about these artists was coming through the magazines, Enemy, Melody Maker, Sounds, a little bit in the newspapers. With David Bowie, it was a lot in the newspapers because the newspapers just like to talk about him like it was a freak. Didn't get a huge amount of love from the newspapers. David Bowie was, he was a curious artist. He was a curious artist unlike any other artist. Was bordering on the glam rock, but he wasn't rock. Away from the kind of pastiche of Slade and do you even consider glam rock? It's probably more T-Rex, Mark Bolan. It was, so he was more of that, artist.
Yeah.
Yes, in the 70s was not kind to that art. If you were into Bowie, you were a puffer faggot queer.
Yeah.
In a nice way. But for us, following it, it was like we had somebody that we could hang our existence on, could see it, be it. And it always, for me, always boils down to that thing. Who could I see that I could be like? So for me, it was David Bowie, music, Jones.
Tell me about Grace.
So Grace
Jones.
Once Grace Jones blazed onto the scene in the 80s. I think it was 80 and 81. That thing that I think possible until that point, and she made it okay to be androgynous. Made it okay to be both. Made it okay to embrace a very masculine hairdo and a very masculine androgynous jawline, structure, hairstyle, suited jacket. She was suited. It was like a men's suit underneath it, so you could see she was a woman because you could see her cleavage, lipstick, lips, massive smile. Just exuding confidence. Never seen. Context of it, when she blazed on the scene 1980, 1981, the other black women in the charts at that time were like Gloria Gaynor, Donna Summer, Diana Ross, big hair, lots of sparkles, massive shoulder pads, lots of dresses, flouncy dresses, very feminine, uber feminine, long nails, red lipstick, just the really sexualized women, women for the male gaze. And Grace Jones came on the scene. It was, I don't give a fuck who's looking at me. I feel good in myself for how I look. And she was just like really working the femme fatale and the femme. She just was obviously a woman with a very masculine power. And that for me was magical, because I was never a girly girl. I've never been a girly girl. I've always been a bit of a tomboy, always climbing trees, always, you know, wearing trousers. Seeing Grace Jones was just like, yeah, I'm going to be like her.
It's interesting when you not being that glam or something, have a glam thing, whether you do nails and long hair or not. And Grace has it's a different type of,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not this kind of feminine glam for the male gaze glam.
No, it's a glam for the me gaze.
Yeah.
It's, do I feel all right looking like this? And then it's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Be me. And for me, when I saw Grace on Private Life on Top of the Pops, sea of white, first of all, because there was hardly ever anybody black on TV in the 80s. This is a truth. I've lived it. I can prove it. We weren't seeing very many black people on TV, and we certainly weren't seeing very many black artists on music programs on TV. So when one came, it's almost like everybody came from their rooms, because all houses didn't have a TV either. And if they did have a TV, they had one TV, probably black and white, and we were all watching the same program at the same time. Grace Jones came on Top of the Pops, just the same as I can remember Ashford and Simpson being on Top of the Pops, just the same as I can remember McFadden and Whitehead being on Top of the Pops. I remember Janet Kay being on Top of the Pops. Cameo. I remember when the black artists were on Top of the Pops, because my family went, oh my God, there's somebody black on telly. Can everybody come and watch? And we did.
Wow.
Because it was like a miracle. It's like, oh my God, there are us. I remember Althea and Donna being on Top of the Pops, and Janet Kay with Silly Games, and the Ward being on Top of the Pops with Ring My Bell. I remember all these moments, all these songs. But it wasn't just the songs, it was that there was somebody black on TV. Grace was one of the first.
From there, I guess you start your way into more, let's say, like socializing with music, because up until then you're in your family and everything's kind of incubated and your tastes are being born, but you're now kind of stepping out, I guess, into community and finding your community out there.
Yeah.
I guess we're talking about early rave days or early DJ days. Can you tell me a little bit about finding your community?
Interestingly enough, because I went to different clubs to my sisters, I was into different music. I was into electronic music, post-punk. I was into David Bowie, Roxy Music, Dead Kennedys, Killing Joke, Susie and the Banshees, Soft Cell, Human League, early Sheffield sound, so Cabaret Voltaire. Lots of music like that. Deutsche Amerikanische Freundschaft. I like Gina X. Gina X is another track, actually, I would say. Gina X, no GDM. One of the tracks, actually, from my starting to go to clubs, strictly because it was based on The Naked Civil Servant. So it's based on the life of Quentin Crisp. No GDM, no Great Dark Man. So it's based on Quentin Crisp, and I always took that awareness, the gay awareness, the gay sort of sensibility in that music really strong. Track actually came out in the late 70s, but I bought it when I started clubbing, so 80, 81.
Into that track through Electroclash, because when Electroclash was happening in the early noughties, there was a great throwback into, I guess, the spirit of punk, but the darkness of the New Romantics, if you like, and somewhere in that mix was Electroclash.
Yeah.
And I was often at Nag Nag Night when I was there every Wednesday night.
That's Princess Julia. You've got the Blitz Kid Supreme.
Julia gave me my first gig, actually.
No, did she?
She did, yeah. But that track used to come out quite a lot. People would play it among kind of the more newer Larry T stuff or the kind of Latigra stuff. People would drop Gina X, no GDM. Timeless, that
A
track.
fantastic record, and the
You
funk
can't
in
really
it
place it. Like, is it synth? Is it new wave? Is it pop? Is it now?
It's all of that.
It's all of that. It's fucking great. That whole
It's
album's
all of
great,
that.
actually.
It's all of that. And when I discovered that tune, which was, I would say 1981, the time when I was going to a club called Pips in Manchester. This is pre-Rave. And I am with all of my queer friends, all of my punk friends, all of my friends, you know, and I'm the only black face on the dance floor.
Wow.
But it didn't matter because everybody else was different. You know, we were all a bunch of cis male friends wore makeup and probably wore more makeup than me. I was into Gary Newman. I was into John Fox. So I had a set of friends who looked like Gary Newman, and I had a set of friends who looked and dressed like John Fox, and I had a set of friends who looked and dressed like Japan. So Mick Khan, laid the ground rules. And then when I got into Rave, I'd had a few years off because I got married. I met someone and then I got married, and my partner didn't like clubs and bait me from buying records, but I still bought records and hid them, which is a weird thing to do, but I did it. Record that really represents me going into Rave and going into clubbing again. Prince off. And I went to see Prince so many times, Main Road, to the gigs, whether he liked it or not, we were going. And the one was a diva, Musical Freedom. Now, Get Off has a funny story because track appeared just at the time when me and my husband were about to split up. Not gone out to clubbing for years. And then I had started to study for my degree. I'd started to move around lots of other people. I had different friends, you know, that had different ideas. And I just wanted to go out again. And I asked him if I could go out. And he said, "Oh, yeah, you can go out, but go out with our friend Tommy because he's just come out. If you go where he goes, then, you know, you'll be safe." So we went to the Number One Club, which was a really cool gay club. And Tommy had said to me, "You know, you've got like a shaved head, so you'll fit right in. Don't worry." And I went to the club. It was a Wednesday night. Nobody there because it was a Wednesday night. And the DJ, who I later found out was Tim Lennox, played Get Off.
Wow.
A Silk Curly remix.
Uh-huh.
And lost my shit on the dance floor. I had so much room, and I'm a dancer anyway, so I just used every inch of the dance floor, and I lost it. I totally got off on the music. I remembered why I loved going to clubs. Now, I've always gone to clubs. I'm not a massive drug taker. Music is a drug for me. Music is my high. Dancing, it has always been my high, and I just always dance all night. Dance to this record like no one was watching, but someone was watching, because when I finished dancing, the manager of the club, Paul, said, "Dance this club," and I'm like, "I don't know what you mean." And he said, "Well, you know, you see those podiums there, you can dance on that all night from 9 till 2, and I'll give you 50 quid. And you can do it Friday and Saturday nights because we need dancers." So, you know, 50 quid a night, twice a week, 100 quid a week, 100 quid a month.
Yeah.
Sometimes a bit more. In 1992, it's paying my mortgage, and it's paying my you know, it's paying my books, it's paying everything. It's a lot of. I said yes, and it was the wedge because my husband agreed to me dancing because obviously the money's coming in and it's paying the mortgage, but he didn't really like what it represented in terms of you know what women do for a living, you know. And I remember him saying, you know, you might as well be a prostitute. That's how he saw DJing as well. It's like you might as well be a prostitute because that's going to a club paid for wearing not very much and people staring at you. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm playing record. Second record was Adiva's Musical Freedom, which just lyrically, musically, everything says it all. And Adiva was just, for me, like the house version of Grace Jones. Flat top, very powerful, androgynous look about her, leather jacket, unitard, really strong voice, very, very black. There was no question about how black either Grace or Adiva were. They were blackness personified. They were not shying away from it. They were not trying to make up or lighten it in any way, shape, or form. They were powerful black women.
Showing the beauty and the power of it. Someone else that triangle there, and it's not really so much about the per se, but about the presence and the. Or was Missy Elliott later? I feel like
Yeah,
she had that as
totally.
well.
Or for me, before Missy Elliott, Queen Latifah. So
100%.
and Queen Latifah also in terms of queerness is just like massive. And I'm so glad she's finally come out. It'll be a long journey and there's no time limit. So
not mention the Hacienda, Paulette, because as you can see,
yeah,
I have a bit of a Hacienda
the big
thing. And, you
poster.
know, my brother moved to Manchester. I think I must have been about 8 or 9. And he was coming back and forth to where we lived in Northern Ireland. And prior to that, you know, a lot of the music you mentioned, like Human League and Voltaire and Soft Cell, I knew because of his obsession with the Manchester sound.
Okay.
And it's fascinating for me to think of sound in its place at that time. Well, I'm calling it a Manchester sound. Some of it was Sheffield, but it's kind of, you know, that kind of Northern English. Yeah, it's Northern English. Fantastic, fantastic music.
I mean, I love the Hacienda and I'm very, very lucky to have been able to go there, not just as somebody who worked there, but before I worked there, I was a punter. I was regularly on that dance floor, dancing with my twin, dancing on my own in the day because it had a cafe, it had a hairdressers in there. It had, you know, yeah. It was way more than people talk about. You know, there was a lot going on. It had an art gallery space. That's what Tony wanted. It wasn't just a club. It was a place where people could gather, misfits could gather.
Like a factory.
Yeah, it wasn't just a nightclub, but the nightclub was what it became famous for. I actually like that cafe. I ate there regularly, where, you know, most people on a flesh night wouldn't eat anything at all. You would guarantee on my break I would be sitting outside the kitchen eating chips or eating something, you know, because the kitchen was in operation. So if there's food there, where are you going to find Paulette? Buy the food.
I remember I would go and stay with my brother, and his partner's son would have been going to Flesh, and he just seemed like the coolest guy in the world.
He probably was.
You know, he was. He still is. You know, it's kind of amazing because I would listen to him about going to Flesh and going to the Hacienda and stuff, and I was too young to go there. But I remember the flyers from.
They're amazing.
remember the flyers for
You know, the
Flesh.
Hacienda did something different to all the other clubs. Artwork. Because up until that point, everybody had been like photocopying it, very handmade, very, very sort of Xeroxed. You look at what the Hacienda did and what the Hacienda contributed to, architecture and design. You know, you can look at the design now and it still is powerful.
I always want to ask, because firstly, aside from all the other reasons that it's a joy to speak to you, to speak to someone that was a resident there and one of only 2 women that were residents there, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like, even for now.
Exactly.
Because try finding the female residents now, you'd be hard pressed.
Actually, for then, it's kind of, well, but I want to ask you from a DJ's point of view, because, you know, sometimes these things fade into legend. What was the sound system like there? Was it great?
Shit!
I've heard that. I wanted to confirm.
It was shit. The sound system
there.
Was awful. The sound system was absolutely shocking. And that is where the Ministry of Sound actually nailed it, because the Ministry of Sound got a really beautiful, bespoke, fully regulated sound system in there that people weren't taking bits of and borrowing and not bringing back, and it wasn't overheating, and Hacienda didn't have any air conditioning, so cleaned from the inside. So you can imagine that with a load of equipment and a bank of amps that's getting, you know, wet,
chemical sweat
every night. You know, it's just like system in the Hacienda. It was loud. It rattled the door. It rattled the entrance door. It's one of my favorite things, is remembering how badly that sound went on the door.
Oh, wow.
That was like the goods entrance, which is like one of those metal.
Yeah.
So it used to rattle that door. So if you were standing in the queue, that would be your first point of contact. You'd hear the
shivers.
And I love that. I really love that. I still love that for any festival, any club. That first sense of, here's the sound. You know, when the sound starts working on your...
That's and anticipation.
That was magical. It was loud. Much more than that, because in downstairs where I was playing, it wasn't a bespoke sound system. It wasn't anything that was put in all permanent. So I had my tables in a double flight case with a mixer in the middle, balanced on circular bar tables and plugged in at the wall. And I had 2 freestanding speakers that people would invariably, because it was never white lined and it was never down, so people would invariably at some point kick the plug out of the wall and the sound would go off.
Oh God. So were your monitors also the sound system of the room?
Always, yes. And maxing and getting too hot and cutting out and waiting for the sound to come back. And it was guerrilla. It was totally guerrilla. And yeah, so the sound system is actually shit.
You heard it here first, kids. You do not need an amazing sound system to change the world.
No, or great decks either.
Nicer if you have one.
Yeah, because that is really my Achilles heel now, is equipment and tech.
But you know what? I mean, I learned to DJ in a club called Trailer Trash, and very often I didn't have a monitor, and it's been the making of me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes kids have it too easy.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
you know, if you learn on a really fucking smooth sound system and then you end up at a festival with no monitor and you can't cope, I can cope. Like, crowd will know if I'm suffering with a monitor problem, because I just know how to get on with it.
Same. And I've played gigs where I've come off and I've said, no, the monitor wasn't working, and people are like, you are?
Yeah.
You know,
I had to mix my phones. The Grace Jones school of, she said that, like, the audience should never know if there's a problem, and if all the electricity goes out, you should still be able to entertain them.
Yeah, that's where that's where I fall short though, because like I say, tech is my Achilles heel. And there's one instance in the book about all 4 CDJs not working
Oh, God.
and being told to sing by the boss, which did not go down well. So I
God.
couldn't Grace Jones it. I did actually strop off, and I think I would still strop off. I think if you're putting on an event, you should definitely have somebody to regulate it.
Start mixing vinyl.
Hmm.
We shouldn't skip over that because I was a hot mess when I started mixing vinyl, but I learned
So was
fast
I.
because I was really didn't, I'm a perfectionist and I didn't want to do something badly. So I was either going to quit or I was going to learn really fast.
Yeah.
And ask you about the first records you were playing and how that went.
I was playing a mixture of all sorts of everything, all kinds of everything.
Everything.
So I was
Bit of
playing, a bit of Dana. Can't be a bit of Dana. Playing a mixture of all sorts. So I was playing everything from Prince, Michael Jackson, Gwen McRae, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, to Mariah Carey, Morales mixes, to DSK, and fitting it all in one set, to Reese Project, which I loved, Inner City, which I loved. So playing of black music, but right across the board. Yes, everything was on vinyl. And I used to get DJ Magazine.
I say Paulette has been awarded a lifetime achievement by.
Yeah, in 2022. That was special. That was a very special moment indeed.
That is massive.
But I used to get DJ Magazine, but at the time, I think it was James. Oh, who is the guy now that did the chart? He put the BPM at the side of the track.
Mm-hmm.
Hit the number on a sticker and stick it on my vinyl. What that BPM meant for years, I did not connect that those numbers were telling me what speed the record, what kind of tempo the record was, not what speed it could go at, but what tempo it was. And it took a while. It took a while for me to figure out that the same tempo went together, and that if you played this one with that, it was never, no matter how hard you tried, you weren't going to get like a 91 BPM record to match seamlessly with a 118, 120. Learning what to mix and blend,
Mm-hmm.
or whether you were going to mix it together. And I learned to DJ on the job in real time in front of people. So I had to learn pretty quickly about what records went together and what records didn't. And no one was helping me. No one was giving me tutorials. There was no such thing as YouTube. I just had to figure it out for myself and realize BPM numbers actually meant and were helping me to do. And eventually, I think it probably took a couple of years. By the time 4-ish, by the time I got to the Zap in Brighton, I was a bit more together on my mixing. A few years though.
To see your sweaty Hacienda record bag with no aircon room.
Always, and bear in mind that people always danced on the chair behind me. So I was in a corner upstairs, a mezzanine upstairs, and it was downstairs. Me kind of triangle off in the corner because that's where the PowerPoint was. And people would dance on the chair behind me, which was where my record box was. So where were my records? Over the floor. Every time someone would kick and dance and kick my record boxes off, and they were skating all over the floor, and the floor was tiled and it was muddy and it was wet and people were standing on them, and like it was guerrilla DJing down there. It was like, in no uncertain terms, it was guerrilla, but it was fantastic, and it was a great learning environment because like the Sheffield and the Leeds posse were really into their music. And if they heard a record that they didn't like, they'd give me the timeout sign, and I had to figure out really quickly how to change the vibe and change the record, and not necessarily always playing to the gallery, because I wasn't playing to the gallery, but it was just figuring out what emotions were needed to make that kind of nice.
Because there's a way of reading the room where you still do the unexpected.
Yeah. And I still do like to play surprise. You didn't think I was going to play that, did you? Surprise. Oh.
The best ones are when you do that yourself. You're like, I don't know if this is going to work, and then you do it and it works, and you're like, love DJing.
I have to say, actually, that the first time I met you, you actually saved my life, and you know this to be true, because I was having a mega anxiety attack of playing. Was it we were playing at? I can't even remember now.
We met in Munich, I think. Was it at Blitz?
Yes, that's it. And I was freaking out because I was in this room of DJs that I didn't even know, and everyone's talking all around me, and I'm like, why am I even here? And I was having my post-pandemic a handle on who I am and what I was there to do, and you were a very, very grounding force. And we just had this conversation in the taxi, which was just like, wow, that person is really special.
Yeah, it's very kind of you to say. All I remember doing is reminding you of lucky they were to be in a lineup with you.
Oh God, yeah. And it was, you've got this, and you understood about the anxiety and the nervousness. It was more than that. It was way more than that. But thank you.
We're having maybe a bit of a tougher time that evening, with your mental health, as we all do at times. I certainly speak for myself. I do struggle with mental health at times, and it's an ever-changing landscape that I learned to navigate on the fly, if you like, and to talk about and to speak about and to not be silent about it and not be ashamed with it, and I think, thankfully, those conversations are becoming easier to have, I hope.
A little bit,
A little bit. And we've still a long way to go there, because you could argue that society-wise, we're in a bit of a mental health crisis.
But, is huge. It's huge.
And I know that part people would say that regular sleep and regular schedule is a good recipe for keeping your mental health well. And we don't have that.
Yeah, but 100% that is the thing. That is the thing over everything. So
I want to ask you about your relationship with Wellbeing and music, and if there's any particular music that you might lean on in tough times.
Yeah, there's loads. I mean, thing for me has been sobriety. 2018, I decided to go sober, fully sober, no drugs, no drink. I don't smoke. The things that I know, when I don't do them, or when I've taken them out of the equation, I am better.
Yes.
So I have chosen wellness over illness, and clarity over confusion. I have chosen a way of life which is better for me over a way of life which didn't do me any favors. Of drinking, I thought I was a great I thought I was a really entertaining drunk. But what I've found is equally as entertaining without the drink.
Mm-hmm.
It has been the lie that the drink helped me to get there. So it's just this realization that all the crutches that I'd been leaning on weren't actually doing me any favors, and that I am that person without those things.
It's wild, isn't it?
So that has been just massive, first of all. But then there was the kind of worry that, okay, so I'm not doing those things. So how am I going to find my place in this industry, which practically runs on those three things, drugs and behavior? The industry does really still, in its own way, run on those things. So it's important to me to find a way and find people and find a network that I could still fit in without doing these things. Me, with mental health, it is also important to, like, when I am absolutely in my darkest, most confused moments, and they still come, the realization is that completely go away, that I am managing these and I'm managing it better year on year. But when it comes, when a crisis comes, I know how to manage it better. So I will switch off my phone, first of all. Addiction to my phone is something that I am really trying to work on at the moment, because, like, coming out of the pandemic, what was once helpful is now not very helpful. So first of all, switch off my phone, a laptop, technology gone, walk, get out in nature, even if it's just going for a city walk. You might not see anything green apart from a tiny little patch that a dog has pooed on, but it's fine. Just go out, get a blow, breathe some fresh air, listen to some birds singing, listen to the traffic, listen to other people being around you, and get out of that bubble, that kind of insular, isolating bubble that makes all of this mental health journey like 10 times more difficult. Pop the bubble, speak to somebody, pick up the phone, whether it's a member of the family or a best friend. Our family can be the friends we've chosen. Not everybody has a great family. I understand that. So pick your best friend, pick your closest, bestest friend that you can, talk about all of this with. And singing, like to sing along and drive my neighbours mad, singing along to that make me feel better. So one of the songs that I sent you is a track by a band called Alive. The track's called Do Lele, and I don't know what that means. I'll have to look it up. But the lyrics, just the start of the song is, when you are lonely, feeling sad, here's what I have to say. Do what you gotta do. This is the way to live in this world. Everyone likes to sing, 'cause when you sing, you smile. Why don't you come along? Let me take you away. And just the lyrics are fantastic. And yes, it does make you smile. And yes, it does make you feel better. Because I don't know what it is about singing, whether you sing badly, whether you sing great, it doesn't matter. Just the same as dancing, whether you dance badly, whether you dance great. Just fucking do it. Because what it does to your energy, what it does to clearing the blocks, what it does to just getting you out of that, again, I say pop the bubble, just getting you out of that thing. You can sing a punk song, it might be Anarchy in the UK that you connect with. It might be Inch Nails. It might be, just anything that makes you, maybe you feel angry. Pick an angry record. Get into it. Let's have it out, just sing, dance. It's out, move your arms, somatic movement. They have proven statistically and scientifically that somatic movement is good for us, is good for the mental health, is good for the body. So that is what I do. Sing, dance, in nature, walk. I have forced myself this week to go back to the gym and change it from this very expensive £250 swim a year to How much have you paid for your last swim? I don't know. My gym membership cost me like X amount of money, like 50 quid a month. So probably I've paid like 600 quid for a swim. You know, get out, use your gym membership. Don't let it fester. Get out there, work out. And even though I was grumpy when I left the gym yesterday, because I had to really force myself to go, but I was grumpy because it's true. It works. It helps. Get out, work up a sweat, get out of your head, and you will feeling better. The other thing that I do is journal, and I do recommend that you write everything down and get it out of your head. And that's where like writing the book really, really helped, because it was very cathartic writing about these things. To cook. Even though I live on my own, I am a single person, you know, hashtag single people's problems. They don't sell things for one person in the shop. So you always have to make more, you know, for two, for four, whatever. But I'm always cooking for my mom or, you know, whatever. Cook. It's another way of creating. It's another way of being artistic. It's another way of realizing a way that we can get in touch with creative side and our creative energies and cook. So that's another thing. And I like walking my sister's dog. Well, he is my emotional support animal supreme. I love that dog, and with all my heart.
All dogs are emotional support dogs. All of those things that you mentioned are golden.
I can't believe I just sang to you.
No, but you know what? It's so beautiful to hear you, and you have such a beautiful, smooth voice. And I used to be a yoga teacher, and one of the things that they prescribe for depression is expression.
Yeah.
And the first thing they say is sing, and the second thing they say is dance. And
yeah, it's true, because they say that expression is the opposite of depression. Depression is us keeping everything inside, locking everything in so deep that and the pressure is what is causing, you know, the illness. What makes it easier is let it out. And I know in my life, becoming comfortable with my age, my color, my sexuality, all of that, talk about it. Mouth, talk about it, open a book, write about it.
Paulette, you're an absolute dream. As we finish up, can you suggest for me and the listener a killer record that you're listening to, maybe in your record bag or at home, something that you're really enjoying?
Right. So for my dance floor destroyer, it is without doubt, and I've been playing this for months and I'm still not hearing lots of people playing it, so maybe it's because lots of people don't like it, but 20 Hertz, and it's a Marco Lys remix, and I think it will have the longevity of his remix of Brighter Days.
Wow.
It hasn't got a lyric to it as such, so it might not have that same hook. Equally as good, and it just the ultimate lift to a peak time dance floor. And then for my headphones at home listening moment, I fully recommend Jalen Nagonda, his album Meticulous. And the artist that I said I cried to at Glastonbury, Arisugi. It's French jazz, French new jazz.
Arisugi.
Keep your mind open, have a listen. It's beautiful, and it's on the label of Rebecca Vazman. So she is a female DJ who has a record label, and fantastic. So just go and check all of that out.
You know, I feel like we've been in the back of a car on the way to a gig. This chat, I could just chat to you all day.
Yeah, but we know we have that. We have that anyway. I just have
that. I feel like we're on our way to a gig. But I want to say thank you for the chat, because you know we've let the listener into one of our chats, and it's Thank you for that. And I also want to say thank you for Jalan Nagonda. It's so beautiful.
It's soul. It sounds like old soul.
But his voice is so queer as well.
Yes.
And I hear like Minnie Riperton and I hear like all this other stuff going on in it. And I'm just like, it's absolutely beautiful. I'm going to listen to it for the rest of the day.
Yes.
I absolutely love you. Thank you so much. You're such a sweetheart. And thank you for taking the time. I know you're crazy busy. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. It's been a long chat. It's really lovely.
Best.
And nurturing and deep chat, and a very necessary one as well.
You've been listening to Queerly Beloved with me, Cormac. Since you've listened right to the end, I wanted to give you a heads up that for each series of Queerly Beloved, I want to start highlighting the work of a queer charity or organisation worth supporting. For Season 2, I've chosen notaphase.org, a charity committed to supporting and uplifting the lives of trans adults through community and joy. You can find a link to Not a Phase at the link in the episode description, as well as playlists for all the music mentioned in today's episode and every episode. While you're there, please do hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my conversations with more talented people. A big thanks to Michael Lane, my producer, to my manager, Melissa Taylor at Tailored Communication, and of course to Amazon Music for their support, and to you, the listener. Until next time, take care of yourself. All the best. Bye.